Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of the Lower East Side Partnership, we are extremely excited to welcome Andrew Flamm from the Small Business Development Center at Pace University. They have worked directly with over 16,000 businesses and helped to invest over $170 million into the New York City economy. We know that there are a lot of different kinds of resources out there, but Andrew Flamm is truly an expert in this field, and we're excited to look at all of the different small business strategies and resources he has to share with us today in this complicated time. So the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Flamm for probably about 30 minutes of his presentation. 30 to 40 minutes. And if you want to just share your questions in the chat, we will be getting to those for a question and answer portion that will happen towards the end. So if you want to just take a second to introduce yourself, Andrew, and then we'll go from there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. The volume okay? Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Good. All right, great. My name is Andrew Flamm. I'm the director, as Clara mentioned, of the Small Business Development at Pace University. We're a center that's part of a network throughout the state. We are funded through a variety of sources through the federal and state government, as well as our host institutions. When we're physically in existence, we're at Pace University in Lower Manhattan, but we work with folks throughout the city. We have counterparts that are located in many different parts of the state as well. There are 8 centers located here in New York City and 22 throughout New York State. Whoops, sorry about that. There we go. So our key services are really about kind of one-on-one assistance. And obviously this is a bit of a different format and structure in these times, but as all of our services are now being done via Zoom, via Skype, phone calls, and that sort of thing. But effectively, the one-on-one focus of having professional business advisors work with small business owners really is still kind of our focus on how we operate, what we do. So the focus really is kind of having these business advisors work one-on-one with individual small business owners, helping identify kind of what their key issue areas are. So whether it's small business financing, we have some we'll talk a bit about that today. Marketing and sales efforts, how to make sure you maximize your means through which to be able to address how to kind of get people familiar with your business and refamiliarizing them with kind of who you are and what you do. And we'll again talk a bit about that today as well. On the sales and procurement side, sort of thinking about if there are opportunities to build and grow your business through, new procurement efforts, whether it's thinking about some, B2B opportunities for some of the businesses that may be relevant on the phone call today, thinking about government procurement opportunities, and I'll touch on that as well. And then certain certifications that exist for business owners, whether it's minority and women-owned business enterprise certification with the city or the state. And the Small Business Administration has some small business designations that can be very powerful tools to help identify and secure government procurement opportunities. So, and then kind of finally want to talk about market research. I'll touch on this a little bit further in the presentation as well. But the item I want to make sure that kind of you all come across with is that we do have a team of pull together very powerful and compelling data, whether you're looking to identify business opportunities, whether you're looking to quantify the marketplace in terms of your prospective customer base. These have been things that have been very, very useful for a wide range of our clients throughout the years. Wanted to touch a little bit on kind of business planning. I sort of feel like the word business plan, oftentimes kind of people envision this as some massive novel you're writing about your business, and it's very theoretical. And I think that in particular in this challenging time, I think being able to figure out how to make that document brief, to the point, and be able to address the changing kind of circumstances that are going on with customers and what their preferences are and what their capacity is, and what you're able to even do as a business owner, I think is so relevant right now. So I think the things that we've historically looked at this document as a way to kind of identify stakeholders, identify funders, and kind of giving them a sense of what your business is all about and telling kind of a compelling story to get them on board with it. But I think a lot of what we're looking at in terms of the clients we're working with now, clearly we'll talk a little bit about some of the COVID-19 resources that are available for businesses. But I think in terms of medium-term planning for your respective ventures, thinking about, what's your business operation going to look like going forward? How is that going to change? Who is it that you need in place? What types of protocols? These are all things that can be spelled out in kind of in a brief way as far as the business plan goes. So this is something that can be very, very useful. And it's something that we spend a lot of time with in terms of helping our clients kind of manage and get their way through that process. I think, in terms of some of the other pieces, I mean, when you're having readers of your plan, they want to make sure that you have a sense from a accounts payable perspective, accounts receivable perspective, where is money coming in and coming out? What are your processes? Who's handling that? The fun part is coming up with your widget and getting it out there into the marketplace, whatever it may be. But you want to make sure that from a business perspective, you're kind of focusing on the pieces that are going to make sure that you're generating the revenue necessary to be able to continue your venture. From a market knowledge perspective, again, this is stuff that we spend, and I guess there's sessions that we would run that kind of cover this just as a topic alone. But very briefly, sort of thinking about the components of kind of who you are and what you do and do well. So when you're thinking about your planning process, what is your business looking like now? What kinds of things are you doing presently that you may not have done, 6 or 8 weeks ago? What's your business model like? And being able to kind of think that through as you have a free moment or two, considering, I guess those are few and far between right now, but envisioning how your business is going to be able to proceed profitably, I think is so important. Thinking about what the changes are to your model, who else is out there that's operating. Maybe there are new competitors that are kind of dipping their toes into the kind of area that you're looking at presently, or maybe some key competitors close their doors and they disappeared. So being able to have a sense what's out there, and that's kind of, I just referenced SWOT analysis briefly, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is kind of your way of being able to look at what you do, what you offer, and who else is out there and what they're doing with it. So again, does not have to be an academic exercise, does not have to be an extensive document, but I think being able to have a sense of who else is out there and what they're doing compared to how you're operating, I think is awfully important. In terms of that, this also may change. We're thinking about, obviously, the Lower East Side and the East Village have such dynamite, restaurants and entertainment venues, and sort of thinking about, just them as an example, where dining in is no longer an option at this juncture. I mean, my hope is before long it will be, for the moment, for those restaurants that can. Like, how do you re-envision what your business is going to be like with curbside delivery, with, pickup arrangements? Ultimately, at some point, if and when we get to the point where we can do eat-in, if you have 25 or 50% of the chairs in the restaurant compared to what they were before, how is that going to work out logistically and kind of from a financial perspective? So having an understanding of operationally how this works and who the target market might be. So thinking about, maybe it was a dining destination that attracted people from all over the city previously, and now your customer base is really from a 10-minute walking distance from your front door. So thinking about what that means, and then how you can be able to utilize that data and that change in terms of being able to refine whatever marketing efforts you might be able to do. And these can be very low cost or no cost efforts that our business advisors will spend a lot of time on. So again, we're happy to kind of talk that through on a one-on-one basis as well. I'm assuming, Claire, I guess we'll just accumulate questions and then we can kind of tackle them at the end so I can make my way through the material. But
that sounds great.
I'm happy to stay on as I'm happy to stay on as long as necessary to kind of go through that. From a lead generation perspective, we do, I mean, some of these may be methods or options that are available and, known to some of you on the call today, but sort of thinking about, these online marketplaces where you can kind of do matchmaking, so thinking about Fiverr and others, where skill sets and things that you have or business venture, business operations that you're doing may be relevant to this type of area. And we do have kind of a listing on our website that's available, and we can kind of share the link for that. So if that kind of spurs some thoughts for you all, kind of we're happy to go through that too. Pitching is something that we spend a lot of time with our clients on. Clearly, kind of what that physically looks like now is going to change a bit. Thinking about the elevator pitch as, it may be more of a remote effort. You may have a Zoom session with somebody and thinking about how that's going to look, how that's going to work. How do you put your best foot forward remotely? But being able to identify kind of what it is about your business that's an important thing. Kind of knowing who you're talking to and what kind of their pain points are or what you're hoping to get from them. Then ultimately what the ask is. So thinking about the pitch is a kind of a way to get key stakeholders kind of interested and involved, whether it's a new client, a new investor, maybe a landlord that you want to be able to talk to about negotiating terms. Being able to kind of have a concise story and a concise understanding of who you are and what you do is really important. I kept a couple of photos here on our site of some of our clients that over the years have won pitch competitions, based on their ability to kind of work with one of our advisors and be able to think about how do I hone in on the who I am and what do I do? How do I tell that story in kind of an effective manner to be able to kind of get that messaging across. So this is certainly a skill that is not going to go away. And I feel like, it may not be issue number one, that some of these items may be, but they're certainly important skills that as you start to re-envision your business to be able to kind of think about how you're effectively describing who you are and what you do in this new marketplace. Capability statements are things I just wanted to kind of mention briefly for some of you on the call where you're looking for contract opportunities. This is really a valuable document to have, effectively a resume for your business to be able to talk through kind of the things that are special about you. This really goes so well hand in hand with the pitch, I think. And our business advisors have a range of templates that they work with to help you kind of tell that story on paper. So if you're, in the, I guess someday soon again, we'll have, procurement and business events, and maybe those are handled remotely now. But ultimately for procurement packages, for things you want to be considered for contract opportunities, this is really a very important document to have. So again, it's something we can definitely help you with for those on the call where this is relevant. Touched a bit on procurement opportunities. So we have, both through the MWE certifications as well as various SBA designations, this really kind of positions you well and should be part of your marketing mix. So I kind of included this here just to make sure that for those of you where procurement is of interest and where you are looking at capability statements, having these certifications included is so very important. So can't emphasize that enough. On the procurement side, we do have a very, very powerful online tool that matches businesses with contract opportunities that would be a potentially good fit for them. And this is done in a very simple way. It's kind of based on keywords. It's based on the capacity of a business. So in a matter of a couple of minutes, being able to sit with a business advisor, be able to hone in on these particular issue areas, they've been able to get into your email boxes effectively kind of, batches of contract opportunities that may be a good fit based on who you are and what you do. So again, if this is of interest and is relevant, we're happy to work with you on that. I wanted to shift gears a little bit at this juncture, sort of thinking about when I was kind of thinking about the presentation about procurement and the need to have working capital, kind of cash on hand to be able to implement projects. So often, I guess the the great thing about, doing government contracting work is there's a wide variety of it, and it can be a very powerful additional customer base that you can add to your mix. The potential downside is there may be some delays in getting payment. So you want to make sure you have enough cash on hand to be able to manage those sorts of projects. So I'll talk a bit about, I guess, friends and family is the obvious one in terms of sources of funding. Investors, which I'm not going to go into too much today, but sort of thinking about key stakeholders and individuals that may be kind of well aligned in terms of coming in as a partner with you. I did want to spend a few moments on crowdfunding and then spend more of the time on kind of debt options and some of the other that'll transition us into the final segment, which will be the kind of the COVID-19 pieces that we'll talk about today. So as far as crowdfunding goes, I mean, these are, I guess there are different ways of looking at crowdfunding. So you're thinking about categories that are available. So if you think about reward-based ones like Indiegogo or Kickstarter, I mean, this is really about figuring out how you raise cash in exchange for some sort of experience. So you're getting money from someone in exchange, you're providing them with something that they wouldn't necessarily be able to get on the marketplace. This is not a debt that you have to repay, but it is kind of a service or product delivery that you're kind of committing to. And if you want to kind of keep the good graces of your circle of supporters, you want to make sure that you're in a position to deliver on that. There are debt-based crowdfunding options like Kiva, which offers 0% interest loans for modest amounts of funding to help business owners kind of get through and kind of establish. This is probably for earlier stage businesses more likely than not, and for business owners that have limited or no credit history. We've seen a range of businesses, and on the next slide, I'll show you one of our clients who, an example of one that had some success with Kiva, was able to raise some funds through that. From a crowd fundraising perspective, I mean, GoFundMe is better known for individual fundraising opportunities, but many small business owners have kind of joined this effort. I think thinking about, in particular, kind of community-facing small businesses who are kind of central points of the respective communities that they serve. And we have a client that I'll show you a sample of in a moment as well. And then finally, looking at kind of crowdfunding options that are kind of debt or stock oriented. There's Wefunder, and there are a number of others where if you're looking to kind of have a larger raise and you're looking to try and kind of get more folks involved, this could be kind of a model to consider. And again, I'm happy to go into more detail on these and others, I guess, in one-off arrangements, I guess, offline. So here are a couple of samples of some of the businesses that I was referencing earlier. On the left is a terrific East Village business, in fact, that we helped kind of raise some funds, a very compelling kind of community-based business. And on the right, through Kiva, so thinking about a business where, this was somebody that had kind of more of a community facing. This is an individual who was raising funds for helping kind of activate, sustainable farmers kind of in other parts of the world. And it kind of had a very compelling kind of sustainable story to it. All right, there we go. So I'm going to shift gears now and talk a bit about kind of debt financing, which will be kind of a good headway for us to get into some of the COVID-19 pieces as well. Let's see. Clara, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. I had something that came up on the screen that concerned me. For this, we'll talk a bit about kind of from debt financing. So thinking about, both the use of funds, kind of what you're using it for, these physical kind of large scale purchases like equipment or a commercial condo, excuse me. Or is it kind of more strategic and kind of periodic, maybe holiday oriented, having enough cash flow on hand to be able to increase inventory, or being able to take advantage of certain opportunities of, purchasing power, if you can do it, and that sort of thing. So thinking about what you're using the funds for, and then being able to match that with, how it's going to work out over time frame, and sort of thinking about, what the overall project cost might look like. So when we speak with our clients, or thinking about when they come in saying they need some financing, we kind of work with them a lot on kind of being able to quantify what that looks like. So it's not just coming with a nice round number of $100,000 or whatever it may be. It's being able to line by line identify what it is that you need, and be able to have justifiable backup to kind of be able to sort of say what this individual item is going to cost me. And then be able to think about kind of what percentage of that overall project cost you as a business. So the higher that percentage, clearly the more effective you're going to be at identifying, whether it's debt financing through a bank, lender, or some sort of investor, sort of having them know that you've got skin in the game is certainly going to be of great benefit. So I will leave it at that, I think. Whoops, there we go. Okay. So as far as the sources of financing goes, I mean, the typical process, the 5 C's of credit, we could spend a great deal of time on another time. So I think I'm going to sort of whiz through that for the moment. The things I did want to make sure I referenced here are having the business plan we've talked about at some length already. This is kind of the narrative piece that you're going to want to be able to have a lender understand who you are, what you do, and what you're going to use the money for. The financial projections and the corresponding assumptions, this is really telling the financial story about your business. So these are going to be complementary, are going to complement kind of that business plan narrative. And it's so important for you to be able to have material in place there that's going to be able to give them kind of an understanding of what the story of the business is. So if you're assuming there's a certain contract coming in, or with we'll go back to the restaurant example of, the doors being able to be open and allow, in-house dining again, to sort of be able to kind of build that line of business back into the projections. So thinking about what the sources of revenue are and what the corresponding costs are kind of operating. So this is something that our advisors are super at. And I think being able to kind of have that pulled together kind of in a realistic fashion, I think is very, very beneficial in terms of helping you get the financing you need. I listed a credit score reference here, I guess, if and when you are ready to look at exploring financing. This is something that's a website that I think offers a free kind of peek at it, which I think is useful for you to have. But, we wouldn't want to have you pull in credit too early in the process. So this is kind of the balancing act of making sure there's no surprises there, but yet not going through kind of the official credit card pulls to make sure that you're not getting these dings every time you go through that. I'm going to touch base briefly on a couple of the small business administration programs that are in place. These are standing programs they have available. These are not, related to, well, I guess I'll get to how they relate to the COVID-19 recovery in a moment. But these are programs that I think are useful and important to be knowledgeable about, I guess, for kind of your medium-term plan in terms of business recovery and business kind of when you're amending your model, whatever it may be. The SBA 7A program is in place to effectively incentivize lenders to provide loans to small businesses. And this is effective both for large-scale financial institutions, but it's also relevant and helpful for community-based lenders. I mean, their number in and around, Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union on Avenue B is an example of a fantastic community-based organization. And one of kind of a wide range of community lenders. Renaissance Economic Development is another one down in Chinatown. So these are some examples of organizations that are focused on kind of serving community-based businesses and sort of thinking about using these SBA guarantees as a way to kind of help them and help banks kind of get to yes more likely than they would otherwise. The SBA's 504 program is another one I wanted to highlight. Again, this is really targeted towards again, kind of larger scale capital expenditures. The real upside to this program is through this, you're able to put as little as 10% down on a project. So, if there's $1 million item and you have to come up with 10% of it, that kind of enables you to have more cash flow in hand and not have to commit so much to kind of the repayment of the project. So again, this has been very, very helpful for a range of the clients that we've worked with. Let's see. There we go. So I wanted to spend the last few moments talking a bit about some of and again, this, I'm sure many of you have been on a number of calls kind of specific to COVID-19. I was trying today to kind of do a bit of a mix between kind of planning for where we go from here with making sure that you all are aware of the wide range of programs that exist, both through the public sector as well as through the private sector to kind of help businesses through this very challenging time. So the first slide I have up here just kind of gives you kind of a look at what our website looks like. We've broken it down to the city programs were dynamite when they were live. At this point, they are fully subscribed. So we kind of have that listed there still, just people would be able to see what was available through the city. But the two key categories you want to kind of take a look at right now, and I'll go through that quickly now and then open up for questions, are the range of programs that are available through the federal government and the wide range of programs that exist through the private sector, whether they're grants, low interest loans, and other marketing, advertising credits, and free legal services. So I'll touch on that a little bit before we close. So first off, I guess hope many or all of you may be aware of the Paycheck Protection Program. I mean, this has been the most widely promoted of the programs that have come out of the federal recovery. The key point of this is, as many of you may know, is the loan forgiveness for those who kind of get payroll back, and that with 8 weeks, I guess the equivalent, effectively, of the forgivable loan equivalent of 8 weeks plus of payroll plus 25% additional for payroll and other for non-payroll charges. So this has really been a very powerful tool, oversubscribed, as I'm sure many of you are having challenges with. The upside to this program, I think, recently is that there have been some monies allocated for smaller financial institutions to be able to diversify the range of sources of funding or sources of who's originating these loans, as this program is all going through individual banks and other community lenders. The direct relationship is between the small business and the lender. The SBA is not involved till kind of later on the back end, effectively, with the bank. So if this is a program that you have not yet applied for, I would strongly encourage you to contact our office, and we're very happy to kind of help you kind of review the material that's required, which is not substantial, and kind of help you understand who some of the likely prospects are. If you don't have an existing bank relationship, we always encourage you to start there. But if you don't, we're happy to talk through some options at the community level as well. I did also want to sort of touch on a couple of other key programs that are in place presently that are getting less press. I guess I'll start from the bottom, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. This has gotten some strong coverage. It's a very effective program. This is a loan program that provides financial loans to businesses that come directly from the SBA. So for this program, there's no bank relationship. This is directly a submission to the SBA. The loans are long-term. They are very beneficial terms, and they do have a modest advance. It's effectively a grant, but it's not called one. An advance that's coming with that program. So this program has been fully subscribed at this point. There is some prospect of additional funding coming available for this, so we would certainly encourage you to connect with one of our business advisors to talk that through. But at this point, if you have not yet submitted, I guess you can kind of sit and wait for this one. So this one, as I said, is fully subscribed at this juncture. The other programs, in particular, the top one I wanted to mention, because now that we've gone through a bit of the 7A and the 504 programs, and this is really an interesting one, which is, and it has not gotten a lot of coverage, which is for businesses that either have existing 7A or 504 loans, or those who are approved for them kind of in the next through September, will have the opportunity to have, their principal, interest, and fee payments effectively waived for a 6-month period. So, just to kind of have that in your back pocket, if these are programs that may be beneficial as well, in particular, and if there are any on the call today, if you have existing SBA loans and your lender has not discussed this with you, you want to make sure that you're bringing this to their attention. If you have any questions on this, obviously, we're happy to go through that as well. Let's see what else we have here. Oops. Waiting for the slide to move. Whoops. Refresh. Okay. Can you see that page okay? I was just refreshing it again, Clara. You okay there?
I can, yeah. Hopefully others can as well. If
great.
you can't, please feel free to say something in the chat.
Okay. Let me go back to where I was a moment ago. There we go. So there are some private sector sources that exist as well. We have arranged them on our website so that you can see them as grants for them that are in place presently. Some are focused on kind of number of employees or industry. Some are by geography. I know the Downtown Alliance just launched one. I believe it was earlier today, or was it Friday? So, I guess these are kind of not everything is going to be relevant for everybody on the call, but I would certainly encourage you to read through them and sort of get a sense of as to whether there may be some of them that might be a good fit for you. There are some low and 0% interest loan programs that are out there. I mentioned Renaissance earlier and Kiva. The Hebrew Free Loan Society is another one that has a really, really good 0% interest loan program that is available to all businesses of all walks of life. So they've been a very solid partner with us over the years as well. There are marketing programs where you add credits and other marketing opportunities that may not be available from others that kind of help generate greater exposure for your business. And in particular, given scarcity of resources, being able to focus on marketing assistance and have these be provided at no cost, I think is really kind of a big benefit at this time. And the last item on that, I guess, is a legal program. The city of New York, through the Small Business Services, offers a commercial lease negotiation resources in terms of attorneys that are available pro bono. But through the city bar's Neighborhood Entrepreneur Law Project program, they also are offering assistance through for this topic as well as a great many others. So they've been a strong partner of ours for a number of years. So if you're looking for or need assistance with one-on-one sessions with attorneys for pro bono sessions, please let me know, and I'm happy to make that connection. Let's see. All right, so calls to action, I think just things to wrap up with, kind of give you some food for thought. Again, all the services we offer are available at no cost. So we'd strongly encourage you to take advantage, connect with one of our business advisors, put over here a couple of topic issue areas that may be of interest. Again, excuse me, some may be more relevant than others for some of you, but just to give you kind of a flavor of the sorts of things that our advisors are working on day in and day out in these one-on-one sessions. Lastly, I guess I touched on our website earlier, kind of above and beyond the COVID-19 based resources. We do have lead generation, procurement, and other topics that we tackle. So just scroll through at your leisure and see if anything else jumps out at you. And this is our contact info here. I will say email is a much faster way to contact us at this point, just given the remote aspect of how we're all operating. So So feel free to reach out at your convenience, and we're happy to work with you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for such an informative
Yep.
presentation. It's very helpful from sort of the storytelling piece through negotiation and finding new sources of fundraising and investment or debt financing like you went through. I wanted to take a second. I know folks have had some trouble interacting with or hearing back about loans. They've applied for EIDL. I think Lynn just mentioned, many folks applied over a month ago and haven't heard anything back. So just curious sort of what advice you're giving to business owners who are experiencing that.
Sure. The things I can say about EIDL thus far are if you have an application number that starts with the number 3, you're in the queue. So I guess not to worry, I think is the one takeaway hopefully some of you will get. Through this program, they have been processing the advance payments and a number of our colleagues and clients have received, things that kind of went to their checking account and were like, I got $1,000. I got $10,000. Does anybody know where that came from? And just the short story is these are the advances. So the way the program was structured is that through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, there are advances of $1,000 per employee. So if you have seen, or hopefully you will see in the not too distant future, for those of you who did apply, if you see deposits into your accounts that match that amount in the near future, that would be kind of what that payment was for.
Receiving these payments, what kinds of things should you be sure to be keeping track of? Because I think a lot of businesses, the terms at the end of this aren't entirely clear in terms of whether it becomes a grant or a loan. So I don't know what advice you might be giving on that.
Okay. I guess that there are 2 programs just to make sure that everybody kind of treats them separately. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that we were just describing, there is in fact an advance that is provided to anybody, or I guess at one point they were saying to anybody that applies, whether you get approved or not for this particular loan program, does not impact the advance. So if you've received the advance and sometime down the road your loan request through the EIDL program. So when I say economic injury disaster loan, I'll just sort of say EIDL for that going forward. Any EIDL submission that you put forward, if you receive the advance, effectively the advance is yours. You don't have to return it if you don't get approved for the loan later. You're also under no obligation to accept the loan. So if you at some point down the future and get a loan, an EIDL loan offer, you have the ability to take it or not. This is a loan that is being extended directly from the Small Business Administration. So there's not a lender involved for this particular program. So the relationship would be between the business owner and the SBA. And there may or may not be some additional material you'll have to provide to them as they get closer to making that determination. There is an interest. The interest is 3.75% for businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits. So if this is a loan that you decide to take, that there's no forgivable aspect to it. This is a loan that has to get repaid, but the terms are very favorable. For the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, that is a program that is offered where the relationship is between the business owner and the bank. Or the community-based lender, whoever it may be. So through this, your relationship and documents and so forth that would be signed would be with whoever the lender is that you're going with. And this is the program where there's the forgivable piece of it, assuming that you get folks back on payroll. And the total would be, again, it's 8 weeks of payroll plus 8 weeks of payroll plus 25% for kind of payroll related costs.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. We got a question about whether or not you are aware of or monitoring any New York City or New York State legislation or proposed legislation that will impact or assist small businesses, either from rent or tax standpoint. if you would be willing to share a little bit about some of those some of that, if you're aware of it.
I am aware of it. I don't know that I have a great deal more insights than perhaps many of you on the phone. The way we're kind of situated as an organization, we're kind of a nonpartisan, and we're not really an advocacy organization. Our focus and efforts are kind of informing our clients when programs are available and being able to kind of help make sure that they're putting their best foot forward, so to speak, in terms of making sure that they have a complete package and can secure it. So I don't think I'm probably the best prospective speaker to kind of tackle that particular topic.
Sure. Lynn was curious, EIDL, there was an understanding that EIDL up to $10,000 was forgivable. Do you want to just speak for a second?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is, again, it's challenging, I think, for, folks like ourselves and obviously the Lower East Side Partnership and others who are trying to make sure that you all have the most updated information. The way the program was initially communicated was, in fact, Lynn, you're right. It was the $10,000 was kind of the number they put out there. That number in turn later became a $10,000 maximum with $1,000 per employee. So if you were a business that had 10 or more employees, you would get the $10,000 advance. But for those that have fewer than 10, it would be $1,000 per employee.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely seems a little different. And then the EIDL advance reduces the amount of forgiveness of the PPP, or no?
You have to look at and make sure. This is a lengthier answer that I will probably tackle in part now, which is whatever you're getting money for, you want to make sure that it's you spend money on things once and not twice. So if you're allocating funds towards particular items, making sure that those funds are not coming from two different program allocations. But I'm happy to talk at greater length about that kind of
one-on-one
offline.
Yeah. I'd like to switch gears, talk about the SWOT analysis and how you're helping businesses think specifically through the sort of strengths and opportunities side of that in such a difficult time.
Sure. So the SWOT analysis is kind of an effective way that we use to help businesses kind of understand kind of where they're at in the marketplace. So for those that are not familiar with the term, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths and weaknesses are really all about kind of issue areas that are kind of specific to your own business. So, strengths, obviously, what is it that you do well? And why is it that people would want to kind of purchase the goods or services from you? And what that looks like and how that's defined right now may be very different than it was 2 months ago. So making sure that you have kind of a real sense of what it is that is special about your business, what it is that I'll bring up that slide. I guess I can, or maybe you can, Clara.
Yeah, I can.
That's probably.
Yeah.
So thinking about kind of how it is that you want to be able to describe what you do, and it's a lot about messaging, I think. So it kind of ties in a little bit with the pitch reference that I made earlier. But also from a weaknesses perspective, I mean, this is also, there may have been some things that were really strong about you before that were not anymore. Maybe you had kind of a really solid reserve in place, and now based on what's going on, you're not on as, many on the call are probably not on as strong a financial footing as they were. So if you were well positioned earlier to be able to manage your finances on your own, and now you may need to explore taking on an investor or securing some debt to be able to get you through a tough point. This could kind of ease into kind of what a weakness might look like. So these are internal aspects. From opportunities and threats, I mean, these are external. So this is like what's happening out there in the world. So, from an opportunity perspective, maybe it becomes I guess I'll just sort of stick with the restaurant example that I had earlier, which is an opportunity maybe, if you were focused on kind of more of a citywide outreach strategy, the opportunity may be people are not really traveling very far right now. People are kind of honing in on goods and services they can procure within their own neighborhoods. And if there is an opportunity for you to understand more effectively, who's close by, that would be a potential customer that you may have overlooked previously. This could be kind of an example of something that would be in that regard. And from a threat perspective, oftentimes, I guess the easiest one to look at is kind of new entrants to the marketplace. But there are others, given the challenges that we're all going through presently, is, do you have the technology and or wherewithal to be able to amend your business, or thinking about externally what's happening outside your four walls and how that's all, impacting kind of what's going on within our respective businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've seen some of the loan program or some of the grant programs that are being touted by Facebook or by Google is that they're giving away ad space or ad, credits. And I'm curious how you're advising people to use those. That seems like that falls into this sort of technology arena. I don't know if you have advice for people who are doing that for the first time or, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are combinations of cash and ad credits, but I think that, yeah, if you haven't advertised on these medium before, kind of knowing what you want to have out there in terms of messaging and being able to work with an advisor, I think is sensible, because you want to, you have a limited capacity to be able to tap into these free resources, and you want to make it count. So I would say kind of be smart about it and make sure you've honed in on what it is that you want to have out there as far as messaging goes.
Yeah. See, there's still a little bit of confusion about the idle conversation that we were having earlier. So I was wondering if you can see that comment, if you just want to clarify. Is the 10K from idols for forgivable or not?
So let's assume you have a 10-person business and you've received a $10,000 idle advance. That pool of funding is forgivable. Effectively, you can treat it as a grant. They're not calling it a grant, but it's effectively an advance. So if you're a 10-person business, you received a $10,000 advance, you decide you don't want to, either you're not approved for, or you decide you don't want to take out an idle loan down the road, the $10,000 is still yours. The Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, is the issue area where I think we may be kind of getting the two programs mixed up a bit. This is where there's 8 weeks of payroll and 25% additional for non-payroll expenses. This is ultimately what the PPP loan amount will be for, assuming you're approved for it. That whole component is forgivable if you kind of keep folks on payroll for the designated amount of time. So that is the forgivable aspect of it, of what the PPP loan would be. If you don't, then it becomes a loan, and the loan term is 1%. So that's hopefully that addresses that question, because there are two different programs and there's different pieces to each. There's different kind of origins of kind of where loans are coming from and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's definitely been a process, a learning curve for everybody, and there's been so much information out there. So I think.
I mean, it's for us too. I mean, I guess one of the folks earlier had asked about, she thought it was a $10,000 advance. It was, and that was what we had posted on our website. And then it wasn't, and then we had to change it. So having you all, whether it's with us or somebody else, just making sure that you're in touch with somebody who's keeping track of these programs. It's complicated and it's challenging, but I think you want to make sure that you're working off of the most recent programs, the most recent applications, the most recent guidance. So I think it's, given kind of all the moving parts with this, I think it's more important than ever to kind of make sure that you're kind of well informed.
Definitely. In the last few minutes, and I think this might be the last question unless folks on the call have other questions, if you could just sort of walk through what it will be like for a business to call and get support and sort of what the first few steps, obviously it will be unique for every small business, but just to give a sense for the folks on the call, what that process or the beginning of that process is like, I think might be helpful.
In terms of working with our center, you mean? Okay. I mean, there's a very brief counseling form that would be completed. Takes 2-3 minutes to complete it, just basic information about who you are and what you need help with. And then we would take that and then be in email contact with you to arrange a one-on-one session. So whether you prefer Zoom or Skype or phone call, whatever you want to do, we'd be able to set that up. We have full-time business advisors that this is what they're doing day and night, kind of connecting with individual businesses. And by you filling out the counseling form first, we'll have a sense of what it is that your key point, whether you're having pain points on your applications, whether you want to explore, one or more of the topics we talked about today in terms of how to reposition your business. If you're throwing your hands up and you don't know kind of from a financial projection perspective, where is my business going? How do I look into the future and figure out kind of who I am and what I'm going to be able to afford to do? Being able to kind of have an understanding or have our business advisors understand kind of what it is that you want to dive into kind of gives us a sense of how to prepare and how to best guide you going forward. These sessions are available, as I said, at no cost, and many of the clients we've worked with over many years. So it's not, it can be if you have one discrete question and you want to connect with somebody once, that's perfectly fine too. But for you to just know that these are kind of professionals and they're very dedicated and very sharp folks that are available to work with you over the long term as well if you need it.
Great. Well, an amazing resource. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do to put it together. I know there are also a lot of free resources on your website. So for folks who maybe have a one-off question, they can start there, but definitely that, you guys are providing an enormous service in a really difficult time. So thank you. And I know we have your contact information. We'll be sending some of that out as well after the call. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep doing what you're doing.
Great. Thank you. Good luck, everybody. And I guess we can help in any way. Please let us know.
That's great. Thank you.